magic, monsters, and the eternal struggle of light over dark. Robert Jordan's revered series of novels, The Wheel of Time, explore an interesting and unique universe which has been tragically underexposed in the visual and interactive media. Though there have been rumors and failed attempts to bring it to the silver and the smaller screen, and murmurs of an attempt at an Obsidian-developed MMO, they haven't yet borne fruit since their appearance. Let's then turn our clocks back to 1999 and re-experience the Wheel of Time PC game, one of the few visual adaptations of the series. Despite the concerning decision to make it a first-person shooter rather than an adventure or role-playing game, this fairly under-the-radar release garnered a modest following, of which a small but dedicated fanbase remains to this day, over 17 years later. Despite being technically overshadowed by more modern titles, it boasts an interesting spin on the genre and offered some of the most impressive architecture and art direction any Unreal Engine 1 game had to offer. As you might expect from an adaptation of one of the longest and verbose fantasy series available, the game has more of a focus on story and setting than most other shooters of the 90s. I remember reading magazine articles before its release, and it also sounded like a very innovative and imaginative shooter, especially its touted multiplayer features, which I'll cover later. So what exactly does this archaic fantasy shooter bring to the table? Let's take a look. In the Wheel of Time, you play Elena, who is part of the Aes Sedai, a special society of channelers of the One Power, the magic force native to the series. In this era of the setting, the Aes Sedai are all female, as all male channelers were cursed long ago with inevitable insanity by the Dark One. Elena is unique in that though she is learned in the One Power and lore, for some reason she is unable to channel, unlike the other sisters of the White Tower.
I can't channel the One Power more than a trickle. Even he knew that.
This proves to be an interesting twist and arc in the storyline, but also serves as a foundation of the gameplay mechanics. Elena must collect and wield Ter'Angreal, special artifacts which allow her to channel the One Power even though she cannot naturally do so otherwise. At the beginning of the game, Elena is attacked in her office by a mysterious assassin who is looking for an unknown artifact, but she is strangely spared his full wrath. The leader of the Aes Sedai in the White Tower, the Amyrlin, later sends her out to pursue the assailant and is given Ter'Angreal to supplant her lack of natural power. As the story unfolds, she is able to wield more and more powerful Ter'Angreal and discovers more about the plots and mysteries surrounding the events taking place in the game's storyline, the secrets about her own powers and part in the world, and the dark forces that threaten it. Jordan's imaginative setting may have been a bit undersold in this game, and as some longtime fans of the novels have pointed out, the game does take some liberties with the source material. But through voiceovers before each chapter, dialogue through many of the missions themselves, and then impressive pre-rendered cutscenes in between, the game is successful in creating interest in the series of novels that inspire it. Although it may not live up to the best story writing and delivery of contemporary games, I found it to be a unique storyline and more than enough to keep the single-player mode going for its duration. It's no secret that first-person shooters set in a fantasy world with magic, monsters, and mayhem hold a special place in my heart. The Wheel of Time was, in a way, a continuation and expansion of the ideas that Heretic and Hexen started, but with a more powerful engine and better storytelling. The Wheel of Time runs in the Unreal Engine 1, which due to its hardware acceleration and revolutionary features at the time, has aged reasonably gracefully compared to its contemporaries. Lighting, water, and special effects are reasonable, and it has tight controls and a functional and minimalistic UI. All in all, a pretty modern presentation considering its age. It is a little tricky to get running on modern operating systems, but thankfully fans have provided guides and easy-to-install packages, which allow the game to run proficiently on later versions of Windows without too much headache. The single-player gameplay is unique from most first-person shooters, as you are able to amass a wide arsenal of Ter'Angreal over the course of the campaign. There's your fairly weak sauce starting ability, the short-range air pulse, darts, tremors, fireballs, a very useful chain lightning, homing spells, decay, whirlwind, and freezing, as well as the magnanimous balefire, which does considerable damage and can even pass through walls. But what makes this game stand out from others in the genre is that more than half of the Ter'Angreal you can collect are supportive or utility-based, such as elemental shields, spell reflection, teleportation, dispel zones and debuffs, traps, several summonable allies, illusions such as decoys and disguises, healing, levitation, as well as vision-enhancing spells that help you find hidden objectives, traps, and see from a distance or in the dark. There are 40 unique Ter'Angreal in all, and due to their consumability, they provide an ever-shifting playing field, where you have to meet each new situation with new tactics and abilities depending on the resources at hand. This helps create a dynamic sort of gameplay which continually changes throughout the campaign, rather than just tossing shotguns and rifle ammo at you for hours on end. What has kept the game alive all these years is its legendary multiplayer offerings. The first is called Arena, which is your run-of-the-mill deathmatch style combat, albeit with the game's interesting and dynamic Ter'Angreal, which allow for some very interesting and creative combat scenarios. How about trapping that corner that people are maneuvering so much with an explosive ward? Or perhaps casting a soul barb on an enemy player, forcing them to damage themselves each time they attack. Or maybe you could guess at where the players might be, charge up a balefire, and zap them through barriers and walls. Arena has some attraction, and many fan-made maps have been designed for the game on top of the base ones. Although the hectic spell-slinging of Arena might not be for everyone, it is a fun distraction for a while, although in my eyes it pales in comparison to the other multiplayer mode. Citadel looks like Capture the Flag right out of Unreal or Quake at first glance. The twist? Maps for this mode feature a main world and 2 to 4 Citadel worlds, which are all accessible through portals between them. Each of the 4 factions, Hound, Forsaken, Children of Light, and Aes Sedai, have their own Citadel, which in a preparation period leading up to the start of the match can be tailored to their own designs. Place a hidden pit near a doorway to catch intruders off guard, install spike traps in tight corridors to whittle down their health before they get to the inner halls, carefully post wardens, archers, monsters, and more to keep guard of your Citadel while you're away. Finding that sweet spot to hide your ever-important seal is key. Somewhere well guarded but not too conspicuous, block off a passage with barricades, or a lockable portcullis to divert or trap enemy players right where you want them, and maybe lay down a wall of fire in the path of their escape route for good measure. Once all citadels are designed, the game can start. Then players of each faction venture forth through their portals, through the no man's land, collecting vital Ter'Angreal on their way to enemy citadels, then proceeding to break into other bases, slip past defenses, and steal your enemy's seals, bringing them back to your own citadel, which wins you the match. This addictive mix of strategy and first-person action really made for some interesting scenarios. Planning out devious traps, diverting traffic, and expertly crafting ambushes is great fun and allows for some diversity of challenge for players, as you never really know what you're getting into when you enter an enemy citadel. Like a hybrid of Unreal Tournament and Dungeon Keeper, this imaginative twist to a familiar objective-based game mode makes for an addictive experience that hasn't quite been replicated anywhere else in gaming. There were several games released right around the turn of the century that we look back at as classics, but were underachieving. Sacrifice, System Shock 2, Outcast, and The Wheel of Time are good examples of how bright ideas, genre bending, and innovation don't always lead to greater sales, and often quite the opposite. A unique idea is hard to market, and when selling a brand new franchise with no name recognition, it can spell death for a would-be hit. The game was warmly reviewed, as many future classics were at the time of release, but was too alien to many fans of the books, and to PC gamers was outshone by the flashier, more established shooters that year such as Quake 3 and Unreal Tournament. It did, however, land a spot on GameSpy's 10 most underrated games of all time list years later, for what it's worth. But just as the wheel of time turns, and ages come and pass, surefire hits like Call of Duty will make billions, while the truly innovative and risk-taking games like Wheel of Time may not get as much attention. Here's hoping we can see another team pick up on the ideas this game had in terms of spell-oriented level design and combat, and a multiplayer mode with an innovative splash of strategy. Building on these basic ideas, refining, balancing, and expanding on them could create a fantastic new game that I'd be eager to play, wouldn't you? What are your thoughts? Ever play the game or are curious about it? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video and would like to see more in this style, please subscribe. Thanks to my supporters on Patreon. please check out my Patreon page if you would like to help me make more content. And thank you for watching.